Okay, welcome back to part two. I'm going to be talking about the three ways to raise money or finance your business. The first one would be investors, second one would be partnerships, and the third one would be through grants and accelerator programs. Um, so with investors, like I said, this was my main goal. I'd done financial projections, and we said we needed to get $250,000. We evaluated our company at $2 million dollars, and we went out there and we raised and raised and raised, or we tried to raise. At the end of the day, I think we were able to raise about $90,000 from investors, and the other one came from an accelerator program. So I'm going to sort of talk to you about, my experiences with raising, what I learned about raising money from investors, and just things that will protect you so you don't make the mistakes that I made. So the first one, like I said, is you need to get your pitch deck done. Your pitch deck needs to be top notch. It needs to be in a PowerPoint slide. I would recommend that you share it with as many people as you can. Don't get up in the concept that, oh, my company's pitch deck is secret. I don't want people to know about it. I don't want people to this. No, share your pitch deck with as many people as possible, because sometimes the person giving you feedback on your pitch deck might actually invest in your company. But aside from that, the more people that are able to look at your pitch deck, the more feedback that you get. But ensure you control the feedback, because you might get into a loop where XYZ says this, ABC says this, and you start listening to everybody, and all of a sudden your pitch deck is always evolving. No, you listen to as many people as you can, but at the end of the day, you have to make the decision to finalize your pitch deck. But your pitch deck, to me, is really a live document. And like I said, I recommend you go to SlideShare, or you just Google past pitch decks, and you'll see a plethora of phenomenal, awesome pitch decks out there. And also feel free to ask people. Like Paystack Shola, for their Y Combinator, he was able to share the application with people, and that really helped people applying. So you never know, you can go out there and talk to other entrepreneurs and say, hey, can I look at your pitch deck? Who knows, Okada Books might even, if you ask, I can probably share it with you with redacted information. But try and get as many pitch decks to look at. Now, once you get your pitch deck out there, share it with as many people as you can. Now, I want to share with you some lessons through my time raising funds, and some of the mistakes I made, because I did make a lot of mistakes. Like I said, we were able to raise about, give or take, $90,000 purely from investor money. The first thing that I would say is that you need to ensure that you have what I call a timeline. This was one of the biggest mistakes I made, where I would talk to an investor, and the investor would just keep pulling me and pulling me and pulling me and pulling me and stringing me along. And because I never set a timeline, I never said this is the deadline for this round, it just kept stretching. And 1 week would turn to 2 months, and it turns to 3 months and 6 months. And you wake up and you're like, wow, this investor is still wasting my time. So ensure that you set a timeline and you communicate your timeline to as many people as possible. Because if you don't have a timeline, you're just going to keep stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching, and you would never, be able to close your round. So get timelines. The other one that I put here, but I just removed it because I don't want people to misconstrue it, is cheat on your investors. Now, I'm not saying cheat on the investors that have given you money, but if you're talking to one investor and they say, look, I'm going to give you $100,000, which has happened to us, don't be like, oh wow, I've gotten $100,000, so I'm just going to relax. No. I've had that happen to me, where an investor group promised us a huge amount of money. It was $150,000, and I just stopped. I just relaxed. I was like, we've made it, we've done it, and I stopped pitching as aggressively as I was pitching to other companies as before, because I believed I had gotten this. But if I had followed the advice that I'm giving you, I would have continued pitching to more people, because until the money hits your account, it's meaningless. It's like someone says they're going to give you $150,000. Great. But has it hit your account? Have you gone through the due diligence process? You might go through the process, and terms and agreements might not be palatable to both parties. So you can't ever stop pitching because someone has said verbally, or even if they sign anything that they want to give you $150,000, until that money gets into your account, you have to keep pitching and you have to keep cheating on your investors. Really, that's just my personal thoughts and opinions on that. The second one is we got stuck in this what I call valuation, and I really thank God for Google Launchpad, which I'll talk about later on in Grants and Accelerator. They were able to give us $10,000, but beyond that, they gave us valuable experience. One of the key things that we got stuck at with our company was our valuation. We thought we were valued at $2 million, and looking at it right now, it's laughable because there was really no basis. We're just putting numbers out there, and it's really very difficult to value a company. It's just a tough magic art to crack, and not many people have done it. So we got stuck because we had people that were willing to give us money, but the valuation turned people off because it was really too high. So imagine someone gives you $20,000 and you value your company at $2 million. You're probably just getting like 1%, something very, very low. Yeah. It was 1%. So it doesn't get people excited to put money into your company. And we kept getting these situations where people want to give us money, and because of the valuation being too high, they will be chased away. And then we had situations where, so that's what we call equity. That's when you raise money and you give an equity stake in your company. And for you to do that, you need to know what your valuation is. And like I said, the problem is that valuation is really, really hard to calculate. It's not a pure science. It's really guesswork. It's like the stock market. And then you have what I call notes. I call them convertible notes. This is where somebody sort of loans you money at what you call a valuation cap. And depending on if you raise money further down the line at a set valuation, they would then convert. Or if they don't convert, you will sort of owe them money. You can sort of study that later on, but it's sort of called a convertible note. So we're struggling with this valuation, and we couldn't raise the money we're trying to raise until we got introduced into what we call a safe. A safe basically is somebody giving you money and saying, look, we don't know what the valuation is. We're not asking you to pay us any debt, like a convertible note. We're not asking for anything. We're just going to give you the money. And when next you raise, based on the amount of money that we've given you and the valuation cap you've raised, we would then convert into shares, just kind of like a convertible note. The only thing with the safe is that you don't lose equity initially, and you're not in debt like a convertible note. A safe, it was started by Y Combinator, and it's really for small companies that are really struggling with their valuation. So it's something that I highly recommend that people look at, unless you're really quite sure of your company, where your company is at, you're mature, you know your numbers, everything. You can do a direct equity. But if you were like us struggling with valuation, I would definitely encourage you to look at the safe. We did it, and we started raising money like that. We had lost out on some people that we were struggling with valuation on, but some others that where maybe we spent 6 weeks or 2 months going back and forth on valuation. Once we presented the safe, they paid. Once you get that valuation out of the way, it makes things easier. The second to the last lesson I wanted to share about investments is that sometimes it's not the quality of investment. Sometimes I got into the trap where I'm like, man, I found this one investor and they're just great. They've done this, they've funded books, they're the perfect company for us, so we're just going to focus a lot of energy on that. No, it's quantity over quality. I like to say quantity is greater than quality. You have to talk to as many people as you can. A friend of mine, I won't call him my friend, but I met him through an accelerator program that I attended, and he knew the people that worked at Inkit, which is like a digital platform similar to Okada Books, doing big things in Germany. And then I was struggling to raise money, and I told him about my difficulties, and Inkit had raised like $1 million like a few weeks ago from the time we had the conversation. And I was like, I've spoken to people and I'm not getting funds. And he was like, how many people have you spoken to? And I said, oh, well, but like 10, 20 people. And he was like, you haven't done anything, right? You haven't done anything. It was like, for me to raise my $1 million, I spoke to 200 to 300 people. I was talking to people every day. I spoke to a man at a coffee shop and he invested in the company. So he was like, you need to ensure that you're talking to as many people as you can. Fundraising in the standard traditional way of investors, it's a time consuming process. And you need to ensure you're talking to as many people as you can in as short as a time frame as possible. Remember what I said with timeline. And the last thing is kind of like a repetition of the past flip, is that people invest in teams, right? With Okada Books, we had a situation where one of our key founding members wasn't a full-time member. And we would send out our pitch deck, we'll pitch, and they will come back and say, oh, well, we don't feel your team is fully committed. So ensure that you have a team that is committed, on ground, ready to hit the ground running, fully vested, good track record of executing work, and you would see how easy it is to raise funds. Like Gokada, the ex-CEO of Jobberman, left Jobberman, joined Gokada, and was able to get a $5 million investment into Gokada, not to be confused with Okada Books. And it was basically they were investing in him because of his track record with Jobberman. So people don't invest in companies purely. They tend to invest in teams. If they trust that your team can execute, if they trust you can execute, they would invest in you. So ensure that you think through this type of team that you have around you. Okay? The second one now is partnerships. My backstory with partnerships is really interesting because we had a large burn rates at Cadabooks. I mean, we're burning through money. And I was desperate to think of a way to raise money. I sometimes say when you're desperate, you stumble upon magical things. So we're desperate, and I was like, what can we do? And for years I've been hatching this plan where I wanted to do what I called a manuscript style writing competition, and I approached several banks about this competition, and they agreed to sponsor it. And I would run you through some of the contracts and some of the mistakes that I made during that whole process. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was able to take this idea and pitch it to two major banks. And from that idea, we were able to raise close to $100,000. It wasn't paid to us directly, and I'll sort of explain these errors that I made with the contracts. But that I was able to raise money through this sort of what I call partnerships with local Nigerian banks that was able to help us sort of stem the tide and finance the company. Now, before you start raising money in partnerships, you need to understand not just your value proposition, but what is that company's value proposition? What excites them? You look at a company like Access Bank, and Access Bank typically is interested in anything that has to do with women. They would sponsor that. They have a track record. That is what excites them. That's their CSR. That's their mission statement. So you don't just want to take this partnership ideas and just send it out. You want to ensure that you understand fully what is it that excites this company. What is it that wants this company is interested in and vested in. And once you understand this value proposition, then you can go into what I call a one-pager. A one-pager basically says, this is what I'm proposing to partner with you. This is how we would do it, and this is why it matters. And why it matters is how it addresses their value proposition. So I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. So with Union Bank, when we approached them to do the university writing contest, our value proposition was this. Union Bank is a legendary bank in Nigeria. It's like First Bank, it's one of the oldest banks in Nigeria. And they were rebranding and they were trying to attract a younger crowd. And our value proposition to them was, look, we're going to create this university writing competition, and it would target young, vibrant university class people. And they were excited about it. Why? Because it addressed an issue that they had. They wanted to be seen as a young, tech savvy company. So by doing that and nailing the value proposition, we sent them a one pager. And the one pager summarized the program, what we're going to do, the overall cost, and how it aligned with their proposition of reaching out to younger people. It's really important that you do this one pager because it will save you a lot of time. You don't want to start doing a full proposal if you don't know whether the company is ready or interested. And if you want, you can send me an email and I can give you sample redacted one pager so you can see how what I'm talking about looks like. Now, when you send out your one pager that aligns with the value proposition, has a sensible budget, has something that excites people, the next thing is you want to work on what I call a slideshow. I made mistakes. Initially, I'll put everything in a PDF, but companies don't want that. If they're interested in your one pager, you want to turn your one pager into a slideshow, like a presentation of the program, because they will typically take this, put it in a boardroom, and flip through the slide. It's very difficult for them to go through your PDFs, and trust me, they don't read it. I can speak from experience when you put all these complex things. But if you put small information in a slideshow, it's really easy for them to read. And when they invite you, you can just project it on the screen and run through the slides. So that's that. So in partnership, like I said, ensure you align with the values of the company that you're trying to partner with. And this is a huge way of making money in Nigeria. A lot of companies do this extremely well. She Leads Africa is an expert. We look up to them in doing partnerships with people and getting financing for their companies in that way. And lots of banks, organizations, they have CSR budgets, they have programs that they're looking to partner with people on. So yeah, that's that. Now, the contracts, you want to ensure that you sort of understand the contracts that you will sign in this partnership, because it's different from investments. There's no save, there's no convertible note, there is no equity or anything, but you sign contracts. And there are two key contracts that I want to talk to you about. The first contract is the lump sum contract. This is the contract we signed when we did the Union Bank university competition. And that's basically where you summarize the contest and you define it so well that they give you a lump sum and say, take this amount of money, maybe it's 100 million naira, and execute the program, and you are responsible for just executing that program the way you said it. And whatever profit you can make from that execution, you make it, right? That's a lump sum sort of contract. They give you the amount. And it's important, and you understand a little bit why. The second one is what I call a cost reimbursable contract. We signed this with GC Bank and the Dusty Manuscript contest. Now, with the cost reimbursable, it's really difficult for you to make money. That's why I say we made a lot of mistakes, because they are simply reimbursing your cost. I spend this is the cost, take it, pay. So yes, on your book, you might be looking like you're putting cash in or you're making money, but in essence, you're just taking that cash and you're using it to pay an actual cost. So that's a cost reimbursable type of contract. So what is the best one to actually utilize? I would recommend, depending on what you do, the lump sum. It's good if you define the project very well and they just give you the money and you execute it and you make all your profits there. Or a cost reimbursable contract is excellent when you include what we call your time and material cost. So you can put a cost reimbursable, but also understand that you also have a cost. So you can also get the company to sort of pay some of your staff costs, your equipment costs, because sometimes we tend to not see those costs. So yeah, you can sort of study up on this one, but you want to ensure that you sort of understand the contract you sign, because it would affect the amount of money that you make. And last but not the least, I want to talk about some of the lessons that I've learned running partnerships in Nigeria, right? The first and only lesson I have is this. It could be a little bit controversial, but it's your networking is much more important than the reports you write. If you've done a great program and you write a report, clap for yourself. But understand that the person that gets his program renewed month in, year out for 5 years straight. It's not the one that just writes a report, but it's the one that wishes the person a happy birthday, goes to their birthday parties, sends thank you cards, sends notes. It's the networking. If you just are like, oh, we've done this program, we did this, and you just send reports, it's not really, it's good, but you want to ensure that you put a personal touch to it, especially in Nigeria. I leave it at that, and you take it for whatever it means. So I've spoken about the first two major ways that I was able to raise money for my company. It was through partnerships and through investments. So the last one I'll talk about now is going to be about grants and accelerator programs, right?